I do think that they have a lot of authors who want to write. So, how they are going to determine which ones to work with? Well, people they already know and trust have a priority. And I think that I really didn't understand that that's how publishing really worked.
All right. I am so excited you all to have Jamie Sears on this podcast. Jamie and I worked on her book together, which is How to Love Teaching Again. Jamie, welcome. I did not grab your official bio, but you are a badass boss bee. You're amazing. And you help teachers love teaching again and help them thrive in their jobs. Am I missing anything on that?
I think that we focus so much on just making things simpler for teachers. We can never make it easy. The job is so challenging, but we always try to find a way to make all of the tasks they have to do just a tad easier so that it takes less time so that they can still become the person that they truly want to be after 3 p.m. because teachers are more than just teachers. They are spouses, parents, friends, children. They have hobbies and loves beyond the classroom. And so we want them to be incredibly successful in the classroom and still get to be whoever they dream of being after 3 p.m.
I love that because it's true too. Like the people who are listening to this podcast want to be authors and they're entrepreneurs, but they also are runners or moms or wives or girlfriends or, all these things as well. It's not just one thing. And I think sometimes that one identity can kind of suck all the air out of the room. So tell me a little bit about your journey to becoming an entrepreneur. So you started out as a teacher in the classroom, right?
I did start off as a teacher in the classroom, and I was incredibly surprised by how few resources I had. I don't know, like when we go to school, we just think that like all the things the teacher gave us that the school provided them, like workbooks and whatever. But I got in the classroom and I had desks and four walls and nothing else. And so I needed to create my own resources. I didn't exactly know how. I had scrapbooked before. That was the only skill set I had to use, but I didn't have a choice. So I learned, like I Googled, I watched YouTube videos, I figured it out and I made my own resources. And another teacher friend walked in my classroom one day and she said, wow, that's amazing. I would pay for that, which I kind of always had an entrepreneur brain. My first business was actually selling Beanie Babies on eBay. So I've always just like seen business opportunities. And as soon as she said, like, you could sell these, I would buy them. I was like, who else would buy them? Like, maybe there's a market. I will say though, I didn't know I was becoming an entrepreneur. I was like, I just want to make $10 to $15 a month so I could buy some resources for my students that I don't know how to make. And that's how it started, was that I was going to put some resources up in this online store and hope that I made $10 a month. So about a year later, I realized I'm making tens of thousands of dollars and I've actually become a business owner. And so I would say I'm a true accidental entrepreneur.
I love that for you. When we met, because we met through a former client of mine, you already had this gigantic author platform, right? Like hundreds of thousands of people following you and buying your products. How did you build that audience for yourself? Because I know a lot of people listening to this, they hear author platform and they just see like endless Instagram posts, and it seems like such a big climb, such a big haul, such a heavy to-do list.
And I think that your audience wants me to tell them about like the secret button that you get to push, and all of a sudden you're at the top of that mountain. But I think that you're right. It is a tall mountain to climb, but you don't climb it in a day. And that's what makes it manageable. You cannot just go from 0 to hundreds of thousands of followers in a day, and it does take work, but it's just one thing at a time. So I grew my platform on Facebook. And so I didn't use much of Instagram or any other platform. I focused on one platform with the goal being to actually grow my email list while using this platform. And so I put a lot of time and energy into Facebook and I showed up. I created weekly content. For me, it was a blog. I know for some people it's a YouTube show or a podcast, but I created a blog post every single week. And I went to Facebook and I shared and I talked to myself for a really long time. I talked to just like my mom and my husband for a long time. And then slowly people started to come and I listened. Like, you can't just talk to grow a platform, you've truly got to be a fly on the wall and be a good listener. So you listen to the problems that they have. You listen to the language they use to describe those problems, and you create something that solves that first problem that they know they have. You give it away for free as a lead magnet and you grow that email list. So I did. I showed up with content weekly. I showed up on a platform even when no one was talking to me. I kept talking. I listened and then I created a solution to a problem, grew that email list just year after year after year of growing it. And I feel like I'm still in those Facebook groups. I'm still listening. I'm still creating new lead magnets, new solutions to the problems they have today. You don't just like grow your platform and then it just like you stop having to do the work. It is work. This is the kind of hard I would rather have. There's a lot of hards that you have to choose between. I got to leave the classroom. The hard I'm in is no longer working 60 hours a week, making almost nothing. I now work less than 20 hours a week. I make good money. And yeah, some of the things I have to do are hard, but the benefit outweighs the hard for me at this point. But I know that when you're just getting started, the mountain just feels like you're never going to get to the top. And I don't know, maybe I'm never going to get to the top because I don't think I'm at the top yet. Maybe you're not supposed to get to the top. Maybe it truly is all about the climb, like Miley Cyrus said. But when you're first starting, you see the top and it feels like you'll never ever get there. Well, now I can see it, but I'm not even sure. Like maybe it's going to keep moving out of reach, but all about growing my business is that I'm never going to be done. Like it's never going to be complete. And you have to be okay with knowing that you're never done. It's actually kind of exciting once you get into it.
Yeah, it's kinda like that moment where I had this moment probably a decade ago where I realized personal growth never ended, and I was like, "Shit, I have to do this again?" And then I was like, "I'm never gonna be done." Like with this ever. Like it's kinda like exercise. It's like, you don't just do one workout and then suddenly you're fit for the rest of your life. You have to keep working out, right? Much to I like working out, so that never bothered me, but like I like doing this. I like posting. I hired someone to do the stuff I don't want to do. But
Yeah.
like, yes, it's very much like choose your heart. I love that so much. Okay. So let's talk about landing the book deal because that's what everybody's here for. So we worked together on your proposal and your book. I have to say that Jamie did write the lion's share of the editorial content for both of those things, which we do I say allow, but we do encourage our authors to do just because if you want to write it, the proposal is a great proving ground to see if you can write it. Both in terms of like actually having the bandwidth to do it, being able to deliver once a week like you did. You still have our benchmark for fastest proposal in 4 months or less. But tell me about the proposal process. Like, what was that like?
Before I met you, I had no idea even what the first step was. And so I don't even know if I told you. Maybe I did because we talked a lot, but I wrote a letter to like a small educational publishing firm about my book idea first. And I got like an immediate like, we're not interested in books like this. That's what it said. That's like all it said. But I didn't
Okay.
write a legit proposal. I didn't know what a proposal was, so I couldn't possibly write a legit proposal until I met you. So when somebody said you have to write a proposal, I'm like, I don't know. In my head, that's like, I don't know, a cover letter. So learning that what the proposal actually was, once you taught me what it was, the writing of the proposal was actually fun for me. Like I had a really good time with it. It was fun to dig into my stories and all the things I had taught in the past, and also not having the pressure of having to write out the entire chapter. It was
Mhm.
like getting to just dip your feet in first before you had to go all in. And I was scared about writing the book. So the proposal warmed me up and helped me to see that I could write the book. But prior to meeting you, I didn't know what a proposal was, and I never would have figured that out without your guidance. I truly had no idea. Somebody told me they're like, "Oh yeah, you have to write an outline," and I was not fully understanding how much you really did have to give them before they would even take you seriously. So the book proposal process was really good for me. It proved to myself like I'm actually going to write this book. I think this is fun. I'm having a really good time. imagining what I could put in this chapter. And so I think getting your feet wet, maybe that's why they have you write the proposal in the first place.
To prove you'll do it? Yes, a little bit, a little bit. I mean, I think, like, that's so interesting because 'cause I've had people walk away after the proposal process was done. They'd be like, "Thank you, but I'm not doing this. Like, that was hard enough," or, "I don't really have much more to say than these 40 pages," or whatever. It's like, it's a really good proving ground. Or we have clients who are like, "Yes, I'll write it." And then, we give them a deadline and 2 weeks go by and I'm like, "All right, 2 weeks has gone by and you haven't written 2 pages. How long is it gonna take you to write 30 pages for this chapter?" And that's when the light bulb comes on of like, "Oh, hey, I wanna write this book, but maybe I don't have the time. Maybe from a practical perspective, it doesn't make sense." Like, all of these things. So that's why we really do encourage people to, try out proposal. Like, we can step in and ghostwrite for you anytime, right? Or edit, which is what I did with you. It's like I did a pretty heavy-handed edit on the editorial content, and we did all the business sections for you because that's easier for me to execute on than for you to me to teach it to you and then you try to, it just doesn't make any sense. But like it was very cooperative and very collaborative, right? So once we got the proposal done, and I have to give credit to your team because your team was right there with me. And once they understood, like, sort of how a publisher would see your company, then we were able to, like, alter, like, what y'all were doing in terms of your strategy to fit what the publisher was doing, right? Like, because at the time you guys had a podcast and it wasn't performing well, although you really loved it. And I was like, ooh, if these numbers are low, publishers could point at that and say, "Hey, what about this?" And I was like, "Nah, let's kill that." Right. And so it was a really interesting, true collaboration with your team too, in terms of all hands on deck with getting the book proposal done and ready and in good shape for a publisher to consider.
Yeah, my team was amazing. I think it's really helpful to have wonderful people that are backing you up. And for me, it was my team and my husband. But I mean, my team had to make the space for me to work
Mhm.
on the book. And that wasn't easy because at that time I was working 40 plus hours in my business. I had meetings all day, every day. And so one of the best things my team did for me was look through my calendar and start pulling things off of it. And either just us not doing them anymore or somebody else on the team taking over that part for me. It was magical. And honestly, we don't want to tell them this, but I never went back to doing all that stuff. It was like they were going to cover it while I wrote the book. But I was like, I'm not going back. Now that we've realized that we can make this space for this project, the project's over and I'm going to leave this space. And that's what I did for a fair amount of time.
It's so interesting too, because I feel like I hear that conversation from our clients more often. Whereas, like, the people who want to build platform, they're like more willing to go hidey hole off and write the whole book and like be like, no, you need to put the platform together because they're equal parts, right? They're very much equal parts in terms of getting your book deal. So let's talk about the proposal was done, and you have an interesting experience where it does happen once in a while, where it was so much easier to get you a deal than to get you a literary agent.
Yeah.
Like, I, like, could not, and I brought up the podcast on purpose because we had a literary agent and I love this person. I worked with her on many, many books, but I sent her your proposal and she's like, "Shouldn't this be a podcast?" And I was like, "No, because educators don't listen to podcasts, as it turns out. They read blogs because apparently they're love to read, which is great for us in terms of producing books, right? Instead of even audiobooks or podcasts or any kind of, like, sort of digital audio content." But I know that we went to a lot of folks and I know we got a lot of no's before you ended up getting a yes. So how did that experience go as an author? Because I think all the entrepreneurial authors I know would be like, "Ooh."
And I'm not gonna lie, I also felt, ugh. It doesn't feel good to be told no. It definitely doesn't. So you have to have some thick skin. I don't know everyone else's experience, but I'm guessing you have to be prepared for some no's along the way. I mean, unless you are like Stephen King, then people are going to say no to you a few times. Um, and it's gonna hurt. And I do feel like I wanted to argue, like, "No, you're wrong because of this, this, and this." But thank goodness you were the one doing the communication. And I think that helped me a lot because they didn't actually say no straight to my face and I didn't have to be the one to respond. And I think that helped me to get through it. But yeah, there were some uncomfortable days, but I also felt like it was really exciting. I kind of was on the edge of my seat the whole time, waiting to hear from you again, knowing that you were talking to some agents and really on the edge of my seat. And the day that I actually interviewed with the person who became my agent, I literally had just had surgery. I was still on bed rest, but I was like, I'm not going to tell them I can't come to this meeting. So like I show up, I'm in my pajamas. I just wore black ones so no one would know. And I'm at my kitchen table. I could barely walk there. And I thought, I hope they don't realize. But it was just so exciting to me to finally have the meeting that I was not going to say, hey, could we wait a week? I was like, I'll do it right now. And I did it like straight out of the hospital because I just I wanted to land
You
it.
wanted to do it.
Yeah, I was excited.
It is a super exciting process, and honestly, I have the same, like, feeling, the same instinct to be like, "No, you're wrong, and here's why," and occasionally I will clap back, like, to that
Mhm.
agent, I was like, "Look, actually, they killed off the entire K to 12 segment at Apple Podcasts because it wasn't performing, so you're wrong about this, respectfully, right? You're wrong." Or we recently had a client who we went to this agent and she's a, I don't think she would care if I said she's a black business coach for educators.
Mhm.
And we took her proposal out, and the agent was like basically proposing a book that was very similar to Rachel Rodgers's book, We Should All Be Millionaires. And I was like, oh, that book's already out. It's called We Should All Be Millionaires. Maybe you weren't familiar with it, you know? But it was really funny because I was like, I'm gonna have to be really nice about what I say to her back, right? Because we're sitting on this call and my client is like chatting, the secret chat in Zoom. She's like secret chatting me. She's like, apparently this bitch has never heard of Rachel Rodgers. I was like, apparently not. you know but it's just interesting because, like, and occasionally I will legitimately clap back. Like, I had a client where an agent that took a meeting with them went off on like transgender as like a definition. I was like, yeah, no, you're not gonna have to do that. Or like the client who black author again, like, she comes from a first generation immigrant background, and the agent suggested that she write for first generation immigrants. I'm going to handle that. I'm going to come in and be like, no, bitch, and here's why. But like, that shouldn't have to be the author's domain. And in a lot of ways, that's something I do for my clients, is do that like kind of in between like work, which, like, actually your literary agent turned out to be like in the edge case of edge cases in terms of being fired from the agency she worked for. And that all went down like on when I was on vacation.
Yeah, well, I would just say, I think, people turned me down first, but
Yeah.
that doesn't define who you are. That's like one person's opinion about your proposal, knowing only the limited amount of information they know about your audience. You know way more about your audience than your
Yep.
agent will, no matter what industry you're in. So it's one person's opinion based on limited amount of research that they might have done. And so I think you just have to be real with yourself and be like, okay, it wasn't for them. They don't want to take on this project. It doesn't mean the project isn't good. It doesn't mean that my
Mhm.
idea isn't good. It doesn't mean that it won't be successful. I've heard of very successful books who got turned down quite a few times. So I think that reminder that it doesn't define me. They literally choose books they are passionate about too. And so it just might not be a good fit, which doesn't mean that my project is not a good idea.
Yes, exactly. And it comes from this idea too of like, my reality is not reality. It's just my reality through my own lens. And so like that agent who, thought educators would listen to it on a podcast, I was like, that's her reality, but it's actually not true. It's not real. Right. And so that's cool. It's fine to move on with. And you did get a literary agent, and she got a great deal for you at Penguin Random House at an imprint called Portfolio. So let's talk about writing the book. So, what was the biggest challenge that you encountered writing the book?
My own mindset, my own brain. I think the first thing, like, I'd always wanted to write a book. I wanted to write a book when I was actually in elementary school. I mean, I thought I was gonna write like fiction, and it turns out like my life took me a whole different route. So this person who always wanted to write a book suddenly is told, you get to write a book. We're going to pay you to write a book. You would think I'd be like grabbing the computer, like, let's go, chapter one. But instead, like the first thought is, oh my gosh, now I actually have to write a book. It's scary. I'm not going to lie that my brain instantly was like, how are you going to write a whole book? You couldn't even write a 10-page research report in 12th grade government. How are you going to write a whole stinking book? And I think one of the first questions I asked you was like, how many words is it got to be? Because, and you gave me a number, and I remember feeling like, whoa, I've never ever written that many words before. And it's the truth, I never had. And so I think the hardest part was the first step, because after I took the first step, it got so much easier. But it's like my brain was telling me just how hard it was going to be from the get go. It's like I celebrated the offer for about 24 hours, and then it clicked in my brain like, oh my gosh, now I have to actually do it. And there was definitely a good week where I was like, I'm panicked. I'm really panicked. And I've talked to some other authors who literally felt the exact same thing. Almost like maybe you need to plan it in your calendar, the week for you to freak out, because now you actually have to do what you wanted to do, but now it seems sort of scary.
Yes, 100%, because it was like you're contractually obligated to do it, right? It's not like you're doing it for fun. It's not like it's not NaNoWriMo or whatever the hell they call that thing in November where you do the challenge of writing a certain amount of words per day. It's like, no, actually, you will get sued if you don't put this in, right? And then you've usually got, like, if you're working with us, it's our responsibility to get you to do that, right? But we have clauses in our contract where we're really not responsible if you don't show up. It's a little thing called author's delay. Like, we can't make magic happen without you. And so the real, like, the way I talk about it with authors is, and the way I think I talked about it with you, it's been a couple of years, is to chunk it down and to really look at chapter by chapter and even maybe segment by segment when we have outlines, because that's the way I do things too, right? Like, I'm like, okay, let's reverse engineer it. We need it to get to the publisher on this day. How much time do I think this author is going to need? Maybe they need less time, because if they have more time, they're going to go to Tinkertown, and that's not a good place to be. Maybe maybe they can be trusted with the manuscript for 4 weeks without completely throwing bombs into it. I don't know. Let's find out, right? Like, let's look at that and see. And then from there, like, once you sort of get your feeling, once you get the first couple chapters under your feet, I feel like it goes a little faster, it goes a little nicer.
Yeah, I think that was my biggest surprise about writing the book, is as scared as I was to write it, it was way easier than I thought it would be. Now, you made it a lot easier. And I still remember that once I got the deal, you asked if I still wanted you to help me with the actual writing of the book. And I asked my husband, like, should I just write it on my own? And he says, heck no, because I don't want to be the person that has to listen to you when you can't figure out what to write about, or when you're struggling with deadlines. I don't want to be that person. And he was right. Like, that's not a good place for your spouse to have to be. And so he was like, I would definitely pay somebody else to tell you what to do, so I don't have to do it. So I'm really thankful that he was encouraging, and he was right. Working with you did make it easier. So I still remember when we first started meeting that I would talk, you would like ask me a question. I would talk a lot about my content, and you have an amazing ability to listen to what I'm saying and just narrow it down into like outlines. And that's what you would do. It's like you would get me talking and I'm going off, and you're like, okay, perfect. So we need this chapter and that chapter. And then I couldn't start writing my book right away because the summers are the busiest in my business. And I said, I've got too many launches. I have too many things going. So we actually had to wait a bit to start writing. So I had a short time. I remember they asked me, when can you have it done? And I was like, I asked them, I go, how long do authors normally take? And they were like, huge ranges. So I feel like I just picked like a number out of my head or something. And I don't know why I picked it, but I still remember that I said, oh, I can have it done by February 1st. And they were like, all right, perfect. Now, as fast as they accepted that, I should have known I probably didn't give myself a ton of time. But you know what? I kind of liked that we kept it in like a tighter box, because
Yeah.
I feel like my excitement was really strong in the beginning. And if I let the project go for a really long time, it was gonna be hard to keep that kind of excitement and momentum going. So you put deadlines on when my chapters were due. And we ended up setting up a schedule where I had basically to write a chapter every 2 weeks. And I set myself up that Tuesdays and Thursdays were going to be my writing days. And we my team and I, we went back and forth about how I worked best, how I wanted it to be. I know some people like to do like an hour every morning. I found that I needed some.
That's the bird clock. Megan has a bird clock that joins the podcast. That is a house finch.
I love it. I love it. But I found that I needed like deep work time. If I only had an hour, I wouldn't get far enough in and then have to remotivate myself every day. So I worked on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I didn't schedule any other meetings except for with you. And on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I wrote. Sometimes I wrote in my bedroom. Sometimes I wrote at coffee shops. But I knew that I basically had to write a fourth of a chapter every time I sat down to write, or I was going to get behind. And I did not want to be behind. So I just kept that. I really kept that schedule and wrote a fourth of a chapter every day that I wrote. And I was, at first, it still sounded like a lot. It's still a lot of words, but it really went fast. And they worked hard with my coach and with you about how to keep the momentum. I would voice to text a lot of stuff. Sometimes when I got stuck on a chapter, I would work with you. I would work with my other coach. I have a life coach I work with, and I would just talk. And oftentimes when I would talk to you, you could pick it out, be like, "Oh, it's right here. This is what you need to write
Mhm.
about." And I was like, "Oh, I didn't see that." It took an outside person often who didn't know my content that well to be like, "Oh, wait a minute, right there. That's where you lit up. That's where you got excited. Can you do that?" And I was really, really surprised that writing the book, that was probably the easiest part of the entire process. And I thought it was going to be the hardest part.
It is that too. And I think in terms of timing, what happens a lot when our clients get deals, especially for the agents that we work with a lot, the literary agents we work with a lot, they'll come back to me usually when they're mid process, because that's when the publisher is going to ask, hey, like, how soon could this be written? All those sorts of things. I'm usually giving a shorter deadline rather than a longer one, because again, that longer deadline. So a short deadline to me is 6 months or less. 4 to 6 months is it's kind of, if it's faster than 4 months, that's considered a crash, and that's like not what you want. Too much pressure just doesn't make a lot of sense. But um 6 months to 12 months is kind of a good sweet spot. Any more than 12 months is
Mhm.
disaster, because you're going to put it off. Also, it's going to fuck with anybody's business launch cycles and like the actual client delivery, that like you actually, it's too long. So 6 months is kind of that sweet spot. And that's just writing the draft. It doesn't include editing, doesn't include proofing or copy editing or any of those production stages. But like definitely that 6 months is what you're going to want to carve out in terms of writing a book for a major publisher. And you're absolutely right. Seeing that outside person, getting that outside perspective. I was stuck on a client chapter yesterday, and I was like, well, let's put my brain on it. And then this morning I was walking the dog and I was like, oh, I need to cut these sections. They belong somewhere else.
Mhm.
Right. And they're not going away. I'm going to literally lift them out of the document, put them in another document, and then wait and remind myself that that's there. But like, that's such a normal part of the process for people. So I love that you say that writing it was the easiest. So what was the biggest joy in terms of the overall publishing process for you?
I think the biggest joy is really that feeling of finishing something so massive, like setting such a huge goal and then getting to finish it. I'll never forget the day the first copy of my book showed up at my house in a box. It happened to be the first day of my team retreat. So my whole team was there and they videoed me opening up the box. But like that, you literally feel tears because you know the blood and sweat and love that went into every dang word that eventually appears in that book. And I still feel insanely proud of that book. When I see that cover, when you hold up that book, I'm like, oh, like I still feel so incredibly proud of myself. Yeah. I feel really proud of myself for tackling such a big project because lots and lots and lots of people think about writing a book, but so few actually do it. And it's like, I did something that so few people will ever have the courage to do. And, there were definitely hard moments. I said that writing the book was the easiest part, but that doesn't mean every day of writing the book was easy. And there was definitely so much to learn. The whole process, you walked me through it one step at a time, which was fantastic. If I had to learn about the whole process without walking through it one step at a time, that would have been very overwhelming to me. And there was definitely certain days that everything felt overwhelming. but knowing that like we tackled those days when my literary agent was fired and I am a literary agent. We tackled that together. When I got stuck, I
Mhm.
want to write a chapter, we tackled that. When my editor quit to go to a new job, hey, we tackled that too. And I feel like each individual thing could have stopped me from achieving something that I really truly wanted to achieve since I was a child. So I feel like that the finishing of something that too often as entrepreneurs, we start a lot of projects. Like I'm guessing a lot of your listeners have a ton of unfinished projects, whether it was a course they were going to make or whatever. I feel like there's blog posts on my computer that I started writing and never finished. And the act of finishing something so huge, it's like I'll never quite get over that feeling.
And it's a multi-year project too, right? Like I think we started working together in 2020 or 2021. This book came out in 2023. We're talking in 2025. Like it's a multi-year, multi-stage. It's almost like a forever project because you're going to be forever promoting this book in your funnels and in your business, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's always attached to me. It's a part of my bio now. It's what people know me for in a lot of areas in my business. So I'm glad we spent a couple of years on it because I want it to be something I'm proud to have attached to my name.
I love that. Okay. Is there something that surprised you?
Oh my gosh, the number of steps there are in the process really surprised me. Like, how is it that I spent like 5 months writing the book, but it takes like a year and a half to get it like from this Google Doc to an actual book? Like, I'm used to things moving a little fast paced in the entrepreneurial world. I will say that the pace that things moved at sometimes was like hard for me. And what was really tough is to go from like, I'm the boss of my business. I'm the CEO. I make the decisions. I can say, like, this is the due date for this, or this is when we're launching it. And writing my book, one of the things that was really hard for me to like, to really grasp and get used to was that even though I was the boss of my book, I didn't have a lot of control about what was going to happen and when. I had to learn to go with the flow a little bit more than I'm used to in my business. I can't I can't determine how long it will take them to edit the copy, or I don't even know how many times they edit the copy. It'd be like the copy is back from editing. I'm like, again, I don't really understand that whole process. And it was such a surprise to me just how complex it is, how many hands touch it, how many people read my book straight through that probably don't care at all about teaching, but care very much about the book's quality. It was really impressive. I don't think I could have gone through all those steps without you though. Wow, there was just they will go back and forth about a comma. And
Yes.
that level of, like, detail, I'm so happy for it. I will say that, like, people don't find a lot of problems in my book, and I've read a lot of books with a lot of problems. They don't really find that, and so I'm like, the attention to detail was insane and a lot of learning about that process, but thank goodness we did it. It might have felt, like, a bit cumbersome right in the moment, but the final product is high quality and like something I'm super proud of now. So I was really surprised just how many times it gets read, just how much you got how much they're going to suggest you change, but also how much control I still had. I just had to learn when to use it. Like maybe I can't say no to everything they wanted, but I there were definite conversations you and I had where it was like, what if we give in on this, but say we're
Mhm.
not going to change this? And that worked every time where we compromised. And I was like, I want this story. My audience loves the story, and I know my audience best. So I'm not going to change it. And okay, I will change this other part here. I see where you're coming from. We went back and forth on the cover. I didn't like the options, but I decided to go ahead and fight for more options, and I got what I asked for. So lots to learn about the actual process. And even though I had to give up a lot of control, just learning where I could use my voice and still get what I truly wanted.
Yes, and I think that's very much a I mean, it's a perennial topic. I'm just going through editing with a client right now, where her editor has returned edits, and we're trying to move around chapters. And I said, "Hey, the editor's not expecting you to get a yes on every single thing. The editor is expecting to get a yes. She'll be thrilled if she gets a yes on 80% of the things." And in terms of covers, too, like this particular client got some covers that were not great, and we're like, "Okay, great." So it's the agent's job then to go back and yell
Mhm.
about that kind of stuff because they can be then the bad cop. But it's a
Mhm.
lot of relationship management and a lot of like, okay, and giving you the space to yell and scream and have those emotions with me or with your agent so that then when you go to the editor you're more clear-headed because some editors have the bandwidth to like take on those emotions and help you work through them, and then other editors are going to be like, F you, I don't have time for this. So
Yeah.
it's like kind of gauging the editor as well in terms of like how receptive, how involved are they going to be? Same thing with the agent, right? So, like, how involved is your agent going to be? And at the time, it wasn't super involved. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to do more lifts, or I'm going to use, my relationship with the agency you're at to get the representation you deserve, right?
I
So, all
so
those sorts of
appreciate
things are
that.
helpful.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I feel like some people who don't know the process as well, before I even started writing my book, they were like, "Oh, you don't wanna go the traditional route because you won't have any say in what your book turns out like." And
Hmm.
I feel like you showed me through the process that that's not true.
Not
The
at all.
Your agent, your editors, they want your book to sell. They want it to be a success. So they are going to offer up a lot of suggestions based on their experience. But when it comes down to it, it always felt like we were a team. And on the team, I was the person who knew the teachers best. My editor was the person who knew publishing best. And it was just a matter of coming together with all of our different expertise and deciding how could we appease the audience, still get the sales we want. And I don't feel like they made every decision. And honestly, my editor in the first meeting we had with her before I even started writing the book, she had just with the proposal said, "I feel like you're missing a whole chapter. I went to your blog and you have a lot of content about this topic, but I don't see it in your book." And she said that and I was like, "Dang, she's right." Like, how did I miss this? It ended up being the longest chapter in my book. It's my favorite chapter in the book. And I'm like, she was not a teacher, but she saw that there was really great content on my blog that I wasn't including. And it's like I got so involved in writing of the proposal that I missed really key factors that she saw. So everyone wants the same thing at the end. It's just everyone has a different expertise. So we have to come together. And I felt like I definitely had a voice in my book. Like, I fought for some stuff that's still there, and the cover, I pretty much designed it because I wanted to, and so I still had quite a bit of say, but I listened to what they had to say too because they are experts, they have worked on a lot of books, and they have an expertise that I certainly don't, so I think there was a great middle ground that we were able to meet.
It's definitely a business partnership, right? Like that's sort of how it should be operating. It's not this publisher godlike figure coming down off high and declaring things. And
Mhm,
it's not an author saying my way or the highway. It's like this in between
mhm,
navigation. And then when someone works with someone like me and you have a literary agent, then you have in betweens. Like I often describe the me as a terrier. If there's something wrong, I'm going, "Rah, rah, rah, rah." And then I have a heavy in the literary agent where I can send, who's like a pit bull, who I can send in, who's going to really muscle the publisher because they have like even more leverage than someone like I have. Because what I have is my relationships and my ability to speak editor and like bond on that same, like, oh, I used to be you. Let's have this conversation versus like the agent being like, hey, if you do us wrong here, not only am I not going to send you any more projects, but neither is my whole firm. That's a lot of
mhm,
muscle.
mhm.
If most of the agents I know won't do that, that's sort of a nuclear option, but they are going to be like, hey, we know this cover is not good enough. Like you and I both know that. So go back to your art team, right? So it's like these conversations that have to happen.
Your relationships were so incredible in the process because everyone respected you. And so it felt really good that you were on my team because they already had either they truly knew you or knew of you. And so there was already this like built-in respect since I kind of came along with you that they also respected me because if you were going to put your name behind my work, then they felt like that it was good enough. So I felt like your relationships were incredible and really helped me through the process.
And that's something too that like publishing is very old school in that way. Like it's very New York in that way. It's very relationship driven. A lot of the folks like your the editorial director at Portfolio, we've known each other since at least 2007-ish or so. Your the person who ended up being your agent after your initial agent left, I've known him since at least 2005. Maybe I've known him since he became an agent.
Mhm.
And I've known the founders of that particular agency since one of them dated all my friends in the early 2000s. That's like how it goes back, you know?
These are
Like I've been,
relationships I could have not replicate, and I didn't know that publishing was so much like who you know, but it
Mhm.
really is a little bit of that who you know. I'm not saying that they don't look at talent, but I do think that they have a lot of authors who want to write. So how they are going to determine which ones to work with? Well, people they already know and trust have a priority, and I think that I really didn't understand that that's how publishing really worked.
Well, if you think about on the receiving end for them, so an agent, an author comes into their world, they're working on commission, they're working on speculation, and so they're not getting paid unless they get a deal. And their hardest amount of their work is in creating the proposal. It's getting the author to write a halfway decent proposal if they're not going to write it themselves, right? And so here I come with Jamie, who has a platform, has a great book idea, it's in the market. I've already sort of put my publishing sense on it. I say this is going to work. This is going to sell copies. I've already written a proposal and here it is in their inbox ready to turn around and sell and make some money on. That's an
Mhm.
amazing like
Yeah,
value add. And
yeah.
then when they go to the publisher's going to be like with books like this, either they're going to ask, is there a collaborator attached? Or the agent is going to be like, hey, there's a collaborator attached. And like in this case, they might have actually gone, to Portfolio and said, hey, Megan's attached. And they know
Mhm.
what that is, right? So they know what that's about. And that, one of my collaborators is Vivian Two's collaborator. She works for me. And so it's like, oh, we drop Viv's name all the time. I don't think Viv would care. But like, it's like, oh yeah, we wrote Vivian Chu's best-selling book, and they're like, oh, okay, it's like that's that reputation, just like in entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
Just among entrepreneurs, we all know the good entrepreneurs, we all know the generous entrepreneurs, we all know the people that kind of have a great reputation for being reciprocal and kind and
Mhm.
thoughtful. And then we have the people who we all know are kind of sketchy or don't always behave with integrity. So that reputational aspect is a big part of succeeding in this world. So that's really important too. And there's people coming and going all the time. There's a lot
Mhm.
of us who have been around forever, and then there's a lot of people who publishing is very fluid.
Mhm. Yeah, I definitely learned that.
Okay, so last question.
Okay.
So this podcast is for entrepreneurs and experts who dream about getting a book deal. What is something that you learned that you would want to share, or maybe like if you could go back in time and tell, 2021 Jamie what was up, what would you say?
I mean, 100%. I actually just got asked this question by somebody who's trying to get a book deal. She asked me, what would you do now that you've actually written a book? What would you tell me?" And 100%, I would collaborate with somebody who already has some success and knows what the publishing industry requires and some of the players in it, because I could have gone at it on my own, but it would have taken me significantly longer to get results. And I truly don't think the end product would have been as great, because when we work together, like the culmination of creative smart business minds created something so much better than just mine alone. And so even though my name is on the front cover, the reality is that working with other people is what got my book on the shelves at Barnes and Noble. And I truly don't think that I would have done all of the hard stuff along the way without some help and reassurance that the hard stuff I was going through was normal and that it wasn't just me. So I think collaborating with someone like you, somebody who is going to walk you through the process, somebody who will hold you accountable. You holding me accountable, setting deadlines. I'm not going to miss a deadline. I don't care who sets it. I'm not going to miss it. And so you held me accountable, got that book written fast, introduced me to the people I needed to meet, answered the millions of questions I had along the way, and just kind of handheld me through the process. I think every first time author needs somebody to do that for them. I wouldn't do it any other way.
I love that answer. I mean, I love that answer because I want people to hire me, but I also love that answer just because it's really honest. I mean, I think that there's a lot of people who want to do it themselves for whatever reason, and it's just like, dude, that's gonna take you longer. It's gonna be harder. You're gonna do it incorrectly. Like, I bought a power washer recently because I couldn't hire someone to power wash to the extent I wanted to have my my like patio power washed. But I was like, dude, like for the most part, I could hire a professional to do these things, and I probably should, right? I probably should find a power washer. I can't be bothered, so I bought my own. But like at a certain point, like you want to just hand it off to the people that, like, oh, a social media manager is a great example, actually. I have a social media manager, a social media strategist. I create content. She takes it, she puts it on Instagram, she puts all the hashtags on it, she shares all the stories. Like, I don't want to learn all that. I don't want to keep up on the algorithm. So I can hire her to do that versus me trying to do that and do all the other things I've got in my business.
Yes, the best entrepreneurial advice anyone ever gave me is you can try to do everything crappy or do one thing really great. And I feel like collaborating in this process meant that I could focus more on the content that I was sharing in the pages of the book and less on like all of these relationships and meetings and back and forth emails and things that I didn't know how to do already, that I didn't understand already. And so if I hadn't collaborated, it might have taken me a decade to get my book out into the world. And that's if I kept the motivation that entire time. But I'd already waited long enough to get my book out into the world. So I still wrote my book. A lot of people are like, oh, I don't want to collaborate because I want it to be me. Like, I wrote my book. I wrote the stories. I wrote the tips. You edited it. You zhuzhed it, made it sound, like the best version of me. Not like you, but the best version of me. And I think that I still get to take credit. Like, I wrote my book, but I was smart and I collaborated with somebody who could get the book out into the world significantly faster than I could do on my own.
Yes, and that is the value add because we can't really write books ourselves. Like, I had a client once come to me and he's like, "You come up with the idea, I'll just put my name in on it and my platform behind it." I was like, "This is not how this works." Like, I don't have ideas. If I did, I'd be a novelist. So it's like no. But
No.
I can take your idea, I can take your platform, I can take what you tell me is important for your readers, and I can make it really good and really useful and a really great book that, like How to Love Teaching Again, gets a million 5-star reviews when on Goodreads and Amazon, which always makes my day when I go check it out.
Aw. I really love that. I really love that I was able to take the content that my audience already loves from me and just share it on a bigger platform, the bookstores, Amazon. But it's all the same things I've been teaching in my business for a long time. And so I feel like working with you, I was able to just really focus on my genius. You focused on your genius, and together the book came to life in 2 years instead of a decade or more.
Love that. All right, y'all, you should go get How to Love Teaching Again. Jamie Sears, fantastic. Buy it for all the educators you know. There's also some really great stuff that I think applies to all entrepreneurship about like your time and your definition of success. And I still have the definition of success that I created writing a book with you inside my planner, which also Jamie got me addicted to plum planners and washi tape and the smelly markers that are like, I only use my planners. So I think of you every time I order a new plum planner.
I should really be an affiliate.
You really should. All right. Thank you so much, Jamie. I know everybody will benefit from this. You should check her out. Jamie Sears on all the relevant platforms. How to Love Teaching Again is her amazing book. Cheers to your success, y'all. Thanks for tuning into the Kind of Big Book Deal podcast. Want to see where you're at on your book journey? Check out my free quiz at meghanstevenson.com/quiz. That's MEGHANSTEVENSON.com/quiz. See you next time.